Hey, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Just a Moment with Mila. I am your host, Jamila. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Today is Monday, February 20th, and I am back with a new episode. So if you guys are ready to rock, let's rock. Okay, guys. So today, I have a question. Are you self-sabotaging your relationships? So we've talked about self-sabotage before on this podcast, right? But we didn't talk about it in terms of relationships. And this is something that I've thought about, recently. And so what is self-sabotage in relationships? It's basically um engaging in behaviors and actions, whether knowingly or unknowingly, that can lead to the demise of a relationship. And, you do this by, pushing people away or, just looking for reasons to end the relationship or leave the relationship. Um, and so, a lot of people do this, like I said, knowingly or unknowingly. But we want to talk about why people do this, right? But before we talk about why we do it, let's talk about what it actually looks like or what it can look like. So let's say that you've been talking to somebody for a while or dating somebody for a while and everything is good, everything is great, the chemistry is on point. Y'all get along really well. You have a lot of fun together. Whether you're being intimate or not, that's great. Whatever. Spend a lot of time together, and you consider taking things to the relationship level. But then all of a sudden, something inside of you forces you to kind of ignore them, put them on the back burner. You stop answering their calls, you stop replying to their text messages, you basically ghost them, right? They try to find out why you're doing this, and you either don't respond, or you do respond and tell them, just that you can't do it anymore or whatever it is, right? You look for an out, or you create the out. So if this sounds familiar to you, whether you've done this or have experienced this on the receiving end, that's somebody self-sabotaging the relationship. So why do people self-sabotage in relationships? They do it for a number of reasons. Um, One of the reasons is trauma, childhood trauma, right? And it usually the childhood trauma comes from parents or caregivers who abused them. So they grow up not being able to trust people, or they fear intimacy because of the trauma. Um, so that's one reason why people self-sabotage in relationships, childhood trauma. Another reason is they feel some sort of fear, right? It's one of two fears. It's fear of abandonment or fear that they will lose themselves in the relationship. They're afraid that they will lose their identity or their independence in a relationship. Sometimes it's both fears at the same time, or working together rather, or other times it's one fear or the other. Um, so that's the second reason why people self-sabotage in relationships. A third reason is because of their expectations. They have unrealistic expectations of a relationship or excessively high expectations of a relationship. So, because they don't know whether or not these expectations are going to be met, or they fear, that they won't be able to meet those expectations themselves, then they sabotage. So, that's the third reason. Fourth reason is, and I think that this is probably the biggest reason, is that they lack self-esteem. They lack high self-esteem. They don't think that they're worthy of receiving the kind of love that they desire. So instead of allowing themselves to really kind of like relax into the relationship and let things develop and allow themselves to get to the place where they can be loved the way that they want to be loved, their lack of self-esteem forces them to sabotage. Okay, so that's the fourth reason. And I think the last reason is they don't know how to do relationships. They don't know how to communicate with one another or with another person. They don't know how to get along with another person. They lack the skills to cultivate relationships in general, um, and especially in this case, romantic relationships. They don't know what they're doing. They lack the skills, so they end up self-sabotaging. So those are some of the reasons why people self-sabotage in relationships. Um, I think that there are signs that people can give another person when they are in the act of self-sabotage. Um, they tend to gaslight. Um, they tend to gaslight their partner's feelings, not or treating them like their partner's feelings don't matter, or that they're not real, or that they're not valid. That's basically what gaslighting is. It's emotional abuse. Another sign that they're self-sabotaging is they exhibit some jealousy. Now, I do think that a little bit of jealousy in a relationship is normal, and I think it might even be healthy. But um, I think too much jealousy, if you're always worried about whether or not the person you're dating is seeing somebody else or talking to somebody else behind your back, or if y'all go out together and they get complimented, more than you do in front of you, or whatever it is, somebody's flirting, with your mate in front of you, and you get highly jealous, that could be a sign that you're self-sabotaging. Now, with regard to, your partner being flirted with in front of you, nobody necessarily likes to see that. So I think that it's normal to get jealous about it, but you have to really kind of take into consideration how your partner handles that in front of you. If they go along with it, that can be a problem, and that's not necessarily at that point. It's not necessarily self-sabotage. It's, you're rightly, um you're in the right to be upset about it. But if they're being flirted with and your partner defends you in front of you, then you shouldn't have anything to worry about. But if it's a constant thing where you're constantly getting jealous over something that might not be that deep, something small, whatever, that could be a sign of self-sabotage. Um, another sign of self-sabotage is if you're always being critical of your partner, if every little thing that they do upsets you, or if you always try to find something wrong with everything they do, you're probably self-sabotaging. So that's another thing. And there's some other things that, can be signs of self-sabotage. I think, um, like I said, low self-esteem, is one. So, there are other signs that I won't really mention right now, but on the other side of the break, I'm going to take a break real quick. On the other side of the break, I'm going to give you some tips on how you can stop self sabotaging if you are a self sabotager in a relationship or in your relationships, rather. I'm going to give you some signs or some tips on how you can work on that and how you can stop. All right, so sit tight and I will be right back. All right, guys. So now I'm going to give you some tips on what you can do to stop yourself sabotaging in your relationships. So remember, we talked about one of the reasons people self sabotage is because of childhood trauma, right? So one of the things that you can do to stop self sabotaging is you can go see a therapist or a counselor to have them help you figure out the things from your childhood that's causing you to act the way you act now, because like I said, it's derived oftentimes from childhood experiences, and these experiences can lead to negative behaviors that you can act out towards other people. So you can work through that, but you might want to do it with a therapist and ask them to help you remove, those fears of abandonment and, losing yourself and all of those things. Work with a therapist or a counselor to help you through that. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is um you got to be able to acknowledge the fact that you're doing it, acknowledge the fact that you are playing a part in why your relationships are always sour or why they're always ending. If the same negative things continue to happen in your relationships, it's a good, chance that you are the common denominator, right? So you got to figure that out, and you have to own up to it, and you have to take responsibility for it. The only way that you can fix it is if you acknowledge that you do it and take responsibility for it. Okay, so that's the second thing. um I think the third thing is, and this kind of goes along with the first thing as far as talking to a counselor or a therapist. There are certain things that trigger you that cause you to act this way, that cause you to self sabotage. So when you work with your therapist, work with them in learning what your triggers are. Help, work with them to figure out what it is that happens that causes you to act the way you act. There are certain things that happen, like there's certain actions that are done, or words that are spoken, or thoughts that you might have in your own mind. Something is happening that causes you to do this. So learn what that is, and maybe you can work through it. Okay, so that is what, the third thing? Yeah, the third thing. Um the fourth thing is you have to learn that not all relationships are created equal. So if your last relationship ended on a bad note, you have to kind of let that go. You got to let that go and understand that the next relationship does not have to be like the last one. It doesn't have to end like the last one. You won't necessarily be hurt like you were the last time if you were hurt. You don't have to hurt the other person like you did the last time if you were the one who did the hurting. It doesn't have to be the same way again. You can make that decision, and you can do what you need to do as far as working on yourself and working on your emotions and on your mindset to make sure that you can let the past go and move forward into this new thing afresh. Okay, so that is um, the fourth thing. And I think the last thing that you can do to work through your self sabotage is it also goes along with the first thing, but it doesn't have to be necessarily with a therapist or a counselor. It can just be with somebody you trust. Open up about how you feel about relationships, what scares you, what your fears are, what your hesitations are, what your expectations are, what you want out of the thing. You know, talk to somebody you trust about how you're feeling. Don't avoid how you're feeling. Um, and maybe you can come up with strategies with the person that you talk to that, can work in your favor and allow you to cultivate a healthy relationship with the person that you're with, the person that you're dating, or somebody new. So those are some tips that you can use to help you work through your self-sabotage in relationships. Um, hopefully they work. Hopefully all of this information works for you. Hopefully it helps. Hopefully that, was good for you. Um, and that's it. All right. All right. All right, guys. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much again for joining me. Share this with somebody who you think might need it. And again, thank you for joining me. Enjoy your Monday. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I will see you guys back here next week. All right. Take care.